my third attempt at making this video, but it's going to happen. Today, I'll be talking about famous trans people in history. This will be part of my Zach Teaching You playlist. I've done videos like this before with LGBTQ historical figures, bi historical figures, now I'm going for trans. This list contains trans women and trans men from all different eras, so let's start. Chevalier d'Eon, born in 1728, the Chevalier d'Eon had an illustrious career as a French spy and diplomat. After spending roughly the first half of his life as a man, the Chevalier began appearing at Queen Elizabeth's court dressed as a woman, claiming to have been assigned female at birth and demanding to be recognized as such by the French government. An autopsy following the Chevalier's death showed the Chevalier had in fact been assigned male at birth. The Chevalier was such a well-known figure that the term Eonism enjoyed a brief vogue as a descriptor for those displaying gender-fluid characteristics. I'm gonna put a couple of disclaimers. Some of the pronouns are a little bit strange. I'm copied and pasted this information from a website that you can check out. I feel like I made this video, it's already up on my channel, but I haven't seen it yet, so I don't think it exists. Anyway, let's make this video. Albert Cashier was a transgender man who served in the Union Army during the Civil War. Born Jenny Irene Hodgers, Cashier claimed in later life that he began dressing in male clothing as a child in order to find work. During the war, Cashier fought in approximately 40 battles, and once single-handedly overpowered a prison guard in order to escape back to his division after being captured. I also want to add a little thing here. Would you like something displayed here? It's like this little patch wall, and you know, just wondering if you'd like me to change the angles of where I'm sitting during videos, just let me know. Next, Michael DeLong, born Laura Maud in May of 1915, Lawrence Michel Dion was the first transgender man ever to undergo a phalloplasty. What that means is they use a skin graft to create a penis, and then they attach it to your body. He also published a book entitled Self, a study in endocrinology and ethics, which many people consider the first book about transgender identity and gender transitioning. In this book, DeLong described transgender identification as innate and unaffected by psychotherapy, and advocated medical treatment using hormones and surgery as an alternative. DeLong himself aided in the surgical transition of Roberta Cow, Britain's first male-to-female transgender person to undergo sexual reassignment surgery. Jeanne d'Arc, the French crusader Jeanne d'Arc, better known to some of you non-French speakers as Joan of Arc, was tried for heresy by an English court and was ultimately burned as a heretic, though the main reason behind her trial was that Joan claimed to hear voices which directed her in battle, so they thought she was crazy. A secondary and nearly as important issue was her insistence on wearing male clothing. She adamantly refused to wear women's clothing or to style her hair in the female-appropriate fashion of the time. It's unclear to modern historians what implications Jeanne d'Arc's devotion to cross-dressing may have had regarding her gender identity or sexuality, but this was considered a very serious blasphemous offense at the time, so the fact that she stuck to it so fiercely has certainly aroused questions. When confronted about her choice to dress exclusively in male attire, Jeanne reportedly said, "It pleases God for me to wear it." Lucy Hicks Anderson, born Tobias Lawson in 1886, Lucy Hicks Anderson married twice and was repeatedly fined and jailed by the government for alleged fraud, for marrying and receiving benefits reserved for same-sex spouses, even though she was allegedly male. In defiance of the charges, Anderson declared, "I defy any doctor in the world to prove that I am not a woman. I have lived, dressed, acted just what I am, a woman." This happened several years ahead of Stonewall, so many people consider Anderson one of the earliest pioneers for marriage equality. Lili Elbe, born in Denmark in 1882, Elbe was not only trans but also a lesbian. She met her wife Gerda at college and they moved to Paris to be artists together. Elle first started dressing in women's clothes to fill in for Gerda's female models, but was so comfortable in ladies' attire that she transitioned to doing so full-time. Gerda became modestly famous in the Paris art scene for her portraits of beautiful women in high-fashion attire, all of which were modeled by Lili. Pretty sure the Danish girl is based on this. I don't really know. You can look that up yourself. Next, Sylvia Rivera was one of the earliest and most influential transgender rights activists following the Stonewall Inn uprising in 1969, at which she was present. She was close friends with Marsha P Johnson, also on this list, and spent almost her entire life fighting for civil rights reform, not only for gay and transgender people, but also for African Americans, and as part of the second wave feminist movement. Harry Allen was a public figure of great renown in the early American West, popping up in pioneer newspapers with frequency throughout the northwestern U.S. Openly declaring his identity as a man who was assigned female at birth, Allen was a bit of a roustabout and was often being arrested for petty crimes such as fist-fighting, public drunkenness, throwing a spittoon at a saloon man, and occasional prostitution. The news media was rather unfairly vicious to Allen, reporting with salacious glee on his shameful lifestyle, which no doubt contributed to his eventual tragic suicide at age 40. Marsha P Johnson, co-founder of STAR, Street Transvestite Action Revolutionaries, with her friend Sylvia Rivera, Marsha P Johnson was one of the first activists to aggressively fight back against institutional prejudice in the wake of the Stonewall Uprising. Famously, when asked by a judge what the initial P stood for, Johnson replied, "Pay it no mind," which would become her signature. A documentary called Pay It No Mind about Johnson's life and work was released in 2012. I don't know if that is still available on Netflix, you can check it out, or if it's available on Hulu. Next, Valerie Arkell Smith. They can't all be winners, and no example of this truism is more striking than that of Valerie Arkell Smith. A member of Italy's fascist party during the 1920s, Arkell Smith went by the name Victor Barker and attempted intermittently to marry and live life as a man. After a brief stint in prison for theft, fraud, and failure to appear in court, Arkell Smith lived for several years under the names John Hill and Jeffrey Norton, ultimately dying in poverty and obscurity. Wilmer Little Axe Broadnax. Born in Houston in 1916, Little Axe was a gospel singer known for his tiny stature and huge voice. Broadnax performed with several gospel groups, including the Southern Gospel Singers, the Five Trumpets, the Golden Echoes, the Spirit of Memphis Quartet, and most famously, the Five Blind Boys of Mississippi. Continuing to perform well into his 70s, it wasn't until an autopsy was performed following his death that it was revealed Broadnax had been assigned female at birth. That explains the tiny stature for his body. Roberta Cow, born in 1918, Roberta Cow was a British fighter pilot. After her service in the British Air Force had come to a close, Cow would become the first British woman to undergo gender reassignment surgery. She was a close friend of Michael DeLong, who helped her obtain access to the surgery. Christine Jorgensen, born in 1926, Christine Jorgensen is often cited as the first American woman to successfully undergo gender reassignment surgery. In reality, though hers was one of the earliest cases, Jorgensen's surgery followed on the heels of at least a few other people. She was, however, the first person to become widely recognized as a transgender woman, and was generally a good sport about giving interviews or responding gracefully to media interest. Jorgensen was a hot topic of debate in the news for many months following her transition and inspired a slew of popular books and films, including reportedly cult director Ed Wood's infamously cheesy Glenn or Glenda. Elagabalus, probably the most bizarre Roman emperor of all time. I have some more information about him that I can pull up in a minute. Safe for Caligula, Elagabalus ascended dubiously to this leadership role when he was just 14 years old. It's hard to really pin down any finite understanding about his gender identity or sexuality, since, like Caligula, he was known for being outrageously decadent and was pretty much all over the board in this regard. He was married 5 different times to both men and women, and is sometimes cited as an example of a person with possible transgender or gender fluid identity, since he often appeared in court wearing women's cosmetic and dressed in fashion typical for women of the time period. Elagabalus also reportedly offered a large amount of money to any doctor who could surgically equip him with female genitalia. Give me a second. You know how they cited Caligula when talking about Elagabalus? Okay, if you're a fan of the Percy Jackson series and you have read Trials of Apollo and gotten the Barnes & Noble version of the Dark Prophecy, I think, you can get, or it's either the Dark Prophecy or the Hidden Oracle, you will get this little pamphlet in the back, which is Apollo's least favorite Roman emperors, and it does talk about Caligula in this. So, Charlie Parkhurst, born in 1812 and raised in an orphanage, Charlie Parkhurst moved to California and became a stagecoach driver. Charlie was assigned female at birth, but lived his life as a man and was successful as a rancher, coach driver, and farmer. His gender assignment at birth was unknown to most of his friends and associates until after his death. Renee Richards. Renee Richards is a tennis player best known for being denied entry to the U.S. Open in 1976 due to having been assigned male at birth. Richards was of the opinion that this prejudicial attitude was a big pile of BS and openly challenged the ban in front of a New York Supreme Court. The court ruled in Richards' favor, establishing a legal precedent against such discrimination. She became a role model and spokesperson for the transgender community. Coco Chanel. Nightclub entertainer Coco Chanel became famous during the late 1950s as one of Europe's first women to undergo gender reassignment surgery. Already a popular singer and performer, her medical transition in 1958 was highly publicized internationally. She spent much of her later life advocating for transgender rights, establishing the Center for Aid, Research, and Information for Transsexuality and Gender Identity, and the French organization Devenir Femme. Wheewah was a member of the Zuni tribe who was profiled by and interacted heavily with white anthropologists. They were a Lamana, or two-spirit, a commonly understood Zuni gender designation separate from the male-female binary. Wheewah was frequently interpreted by Westerners as a cisgender woman, but had in fact been assigned male at birth. Also, I'm going to say another disclaimer, I may be butchering names right now. That could be a problem. If you want to help me with any pronunciations, if I ever do this video or any other videos with this sort of information, please tell me the correct pronunciations of certain names. I try to do my research, I'm just guessing mainly, but if you want to help me, that would be great. But don't get like super butthurt in the comments and be like, oh, well, you pronounced this wrong, and you pronounced this wrong, and you pronounced this wrong, and your facts are wrong. And I was like, I got this from a website that was all about transgender, you know, celebrities and historical figures. So if you want to tell me I'm wrong, then you do the research next time. Alan L. Hart, born in 1890, Hart was an accomplished radiologist and medical researcher and was one of the first Americans to undergo a hysterectomy for the purpose of gender reassignment surgery. Therapy. A hysterectomy is when you remove the uterus and the fallopian tubes and all of that out of your body. Hart pioneered the use of X-ray technology in tuberculosis screening, as application of technology helped to save thousands of lives. He was also a novelist and short story writer. Billy Tipton, born in 1914, Tipton was a popular jazz musician who was assigned female at birth, but lived his life as a man. Though Tipton began at an early age to dress and act as a man, he initially lived for several years as a lesbian. Like many other transgender people of his time, Tipton kept his gender assignment at birth secret from all but his most intimate acquaintances, and it wasn't discovered until after his death. Virginia Prince, born in 1912, Virginia Prince was one of the earliest transgender rights activists and organizers. She published the magazine Transvestite Transvestia, starting in 1960, and founded the Society for the Second Self. Prince originally identified as a transvestite and insisted she was in fact a man who merely enjoyed dressing in women's clothes, but later she changed her affiliation and began using she/her pronouns. Angela Morley was a classical composer who also became famous for her work as a soundtrack artist for television and film. She was nominated for 2 Academy Awards and several Emmy nominations for her work on popular TV shows like Dallas and Dynasty. She worked for many years under the name Walter Stott and returned to the industry following gender reassignment therapy, continuing her successful failure. Karla Brown, as a naval officer during the 1950s, Karla Brown discovered during a routine physical that she had been born intersex. She later applied for Danish citizenship, planning to move to Denmark and have gender reassignment surgery. Brown's plan was to marry her boyfriend, who was stationed in Germany at the time, but her plans were thwarted by the bigoted and nosy American government, which arrested her for cross-dressing, which apparently was illegal in the 50s, and fined her a massive amount of money. It's unconfirmed, but there is some possibility that Brown was eventually able to get gender reassignment surgery, in which case she would have been the first black woman ever to medically transition. Last but not least, Sir Aaron Forbes, 11th Baronet. Forbes' case is an interesting story. Assigned female at birth, Forbes legally re-registered as a male in 1952. As a man, he stood to inherit his older brother's estate and titles. However, Forbes' cousin legally challenged the inheritance by insisting Forbes' legal gender was invalid. This all happened under cover of great secrecy, though, in order to avoid a scandal that would reflect badly on the entire family. Ultimately, the judge decided Forbes' cousin was just being a crybaby and awarded the baronetcy to Forbes as originally planned. Thank you for watching this video. Like if you found it interesting, comment what videos I should make next, subscribe for more information about LGBTQ celebrities and historical figures, follow the social media links in the description below, and hit that notification bell for a new video every Saturday. Peace, and thank you for being part of this journey.